Hey guys, welcome back to Vinceville Customs, and today we're going to continue our sponsored series from Garage Kit US Colors on their Denizens of Zoe Hariqa Fire Elemental Kit. In this video we're going to focus mostly on the skin tones. I'm going to try and go over as much as I possibly can. I really don't have a specific formula on how I paint skin. I just more or less keep blending until I get to where I want it. Some people like to paint light to dark, other people like to paint dark to light. It all depends on what you feel more comfortable with. I'm more or less, I paint my base skin tone, which is the lightest color, and then I add in all my shadows and I blend everything out. So I'll give you as much information as I can, but like I said, there's no real formula. I've always been taught, and I always kind of just keep blending until I get it to where I want it. And then sometimes you could blend, you can overblend, you can underblend, or you just keep going until you just like it. So it all depends on what you feel comfortable with. Some people might, who are new to the hobby might just say, I'm going to do a base color and a shadow and then I'm done. Other people like to add in lots of colors like greens, blues, reds, do modding. There's tons of ways you could paint a statue. It all depends on what you like to do. I'm more into like comic book looking paint-ups, Capcom artwork looking paint-ups where you got your base colors, a couple shadows, and you go from there. I'm not really a fan of adding a lot of blues and reds and greens to make it too realistic. I'm more of a comic book person, so kind of that's how I paint. So what we'll do is we're going to get in a little bit closer, we'll go over the paint, and then we'll just start diving in. Okay, so as far as the figure going, we're ready to go. If you've seen the previous videos, I went through everything. I did some tedious work off the line of the pictures, which means I looked up from scratches, I looked at dents, I filled in little areas, some tedious work that really just you have to kind of sit down and kind of go over. So at this point, I've been looking at the red primer for so long. At this point, you look at the red primer, you look at it, and you keep seeing it to the point where you're not really seeing a lot of errors. So there might be some scratches, there might be dents, there might be some stuff I'm not seeing anymore because I'm just kind of seeing red now. So what I like to do is a base coat of Garage Kit's Flesh over all the skin tone, and then I might see some stuff I didn't see before. Some light, with the lighter paint, you might see some scratches or you might see some dents you need to fill in. So I might do some more putty work with some of the Tamiya putty to fill in those errors and then go back over again with the flesh tone and then start doing all my detailing work. Now, if you have an area that has a little bit of resin showing, it's not the end of the world, because you can see right here there was a little bit of a mess up, so I kind of sanded that down with some putty work and some of the resin showing. Now, a little spot like that is not the end of the world. You don't have to say, oh my god, I gotta go and prime that area, the paint's never gonna stick. It's fine. Something like that's not the end of the world. But if you have the whole item that you never primed from the beginning, then yes, you will run into issues if you don't really prime it up. It's always good to use some kind of a primer. So after that, once I get all the errors done and anything's looking good, we'll start painting up. Now, I paint light to dark, which means I have my light coat onto the figure. I'd add in shadows and I blend down. Some people like to do their darkest color first and then do their highlights afterwards. And like I said, some people like the greens, blues, reds, yellows, and do whatever they want to do with their paint up. So like I said, I go more comic book looking, Capcom artwork, so it's a little bit more simple, but I don't have a formula for like, okay, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to keep blending until I get it to where I want. So a lot of the colors that we have here is Garage Kit's Flesh Tone as the base. We have Garage Kit's Transparency Flesh. I have a paint bottle here mixed up of paints before, which is going to just help with the figure. It's kind of more of like a little bit of a bronzy type look. I just kind of want to not have her pure, bright, fair skin. I want to have a little bit more of a tan to her. At least that's the goal. Then we have some Transparency Bright Flesh here. We have some Burnt Sienna. We have Bronze Flesh. We have Transparency Pale Flesh. And then we have some Gold Toner. I might be using some other colors as it progresses. We'll see how it goes. But this is kind of mostly the base colors what we're going to do. Now, the idea, like I said, is I'll be painting. And I'll try to give as much information as I go. But I like to blend everything out. So, like I said, I'll keep going and painting until I get it to where I want it. Then, after we get the skin tone done, we're going to add a little bit extra to the skin tone. We're going to make her look like a fire elemental, but we're going to do like a cracked up lava skin on her feet, on her hands, and maybe around the eye area. And we'll get to that later, but I have the vision in my head. Normally what I would do is go into like Photoshop and maybe do like a Photoshop image of it. I don't know if I will have the time. It's kind of hard to do it with like somebody else's paint up, like Jim Capone's on the box. If I took that picture and I did what I wanted to do, it might look weird. But my idea is we're going to do the flesh tone. We're going to do some lava cracked up stuff around her feet, her hands, her eye. The bottom of her dress is going to be a black latex dress. It's going to be very shiny, and the upper part of her dress is going to be, I guess you could say, mahogany leather red. Her hair, I want to go more of a dirty blonde, like a very dirty blonde. And then her jewelry is all silver. I don't like gold jewelry. I want to do all silver. So I think it'll come together pretty well. I see it in my head, but it's hard to explain until you guys see as we progress. So I figured I'd give as much information now. But let's get the skin tone going, and we'll pretty much get a lot of it done as much as we can soon. And then the dress is going to be the tricky part, especially the black latex, because I'm going to have to use some other brand paints for those, because I have a specific formula that I've done for the past couple years, and I just got to keep doing it with it, and I have to get it to that dress. So we'll get to that after we do skin tone. I always do skin tone, then the outfit, and then the last is usually the hair, because it kind of hair goes over everything. Some people might do skin tone last and do the dress first. It all depends on what you feel comfortable with. So it's always easier for me to do skin tone, seal it up, and do everything else. So let's get this going. Okay, we're going to start adding a dark layer. Not a layer, but we're just going to hit shadow areas on her. I'm not really thinking about like, okay, I got to hit it this. I'm just going to slap some color onto her just to see how the paint hits certain areas, just to get a feel of the sculpt, see where I want shading. So right now I just put a couple drops of, the bronze flesh in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple drops of burnt sienna. And just sort of like, just mix it up like so, like that. Because you don't want to do pure raw sienna on it. You want to have a little bit of the Garage Kits colors mixed into it. If you want to thin it out a little bit, you can add like a drop of gold toner or something. Just kind of give a little bit of a thinness to it. That's why I like the transparencies of Garage Kits, because they act as a thinner too. So, and then just go like that. Now if you feel that it's too much, you can actually add a little bit more flesh tone in there. Mix it up. So if you really don't want to go this route, you can actually mix up different bottles of gradations of colors. If you want to go that route, you can go like lighter, darker, darker, really dark. I just do everything in a cup. It's just easier that way. And like I said, I blend everything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go throughout the sculpt, and I'm just going to make sure the color's coming out the way I want it. And I'm just going to hit certain areas. Now I don't care if I overspray because it's all going to get taken down. So the idea is get some paint in the shadow areas, you know, like underneath the arms, around there, over here, around the eyes, and just, you know, just go a little bit heavy with it. It doesn't really matter. You know, just kind of throwing color on it for now, so you can see how it's looking. Now, if I feel that a color is a little bit too reddish, I do have a bottle here of burnt umber. So you never want to go black paint into your skin tones, because you'll muddy it out. So if you add a little bit of a burnt umber, it'll darken it up just a little bit, and go from there. So I'm going to go throughout the whole sculpt now. I'm going to hit a lot of the shadow areas. It's going to look very weird, but that all gets taken down over time as you keep blending. It's just that I find that it's easier to hit in these darker areas now, because it helps get the paint in there, and it also helps me see how like the paint's hitting the item. Because if you're have like an arm here and you're spraying this, sometimes the overspray goes back into the face, and then you get mess ups over there. So you got to think about where your positions of your pieces are too. It's kind of, you got to kind of play with it. So, you know, like especially underneath here. So if we start hitting paint over in here, it might overspray over to here to mess up that leg, you know. So you got to kind of learn your control of where you're going. Plus, also I want to turn on the airbrush booth too when I'm doing this stuff, because you don't want to breathe it in and everything. So let's just get all these darker areas on, and then we'll come back and we'll start doing the next steps. Okay, so I got a feel for how this is like, how the paint's hitting it. Certain areas that overspray, making sure how I can control my airbrush. So it's going to require some going in closer with the airbrush. That it's going to be hard to get on camera. But what I like to do next is sort of kind of take this down. So I have a semi-transparent Garage Kits flash, and what I like to do is just mist over the item. Just kind of mist down the colors I did. Because like I say, I like to overspray, sort of kind of see how things are looking. It looks very weird. Whenever I paint flesh, I feel like the character looks like an alien. So you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know if this is going to look right. But then when you start adding color of the outfit, the jewelry, the hair, everything comes together. So, you know, sometimes you got to actually think like, okay, maybe I've gone too far. But right now, it's very messy looking. It's just slapped color on it. And then right now, we're just going to tone it down. So usually I just kick on the airbrush booth and just sort of mist this down a little bit. So just kind of take down the paint a little bit. Sort of take down the little mess up areas. It starts blending a little bit more. And you don't have to worry about if you overspray. Just want to, so it starts blending it. And then you'll start to see certain areas like, okay, so that's how the paint's hitting that. So like over here, I oversprayed a little bit too much when I did the shadowing. So semi-transparent sort of helps like the dark colors still stay there, but it also takes it down a little bit. But by doing that, as you notice, like you can look in her chest area, you start to see like blending start happening. It starts to like, okay, so this area is starting to get lighter, but the dark areas are staying under. But this is a little bit messed up over here at her bottom of her rib cage. So you kind of hit it there a little bit. And you just keep playing with it. You just keep going. Now, if you're not into airbrushing or you like to use pastels, you know, I like to use pastels later on, but I don't use like chalk pastels where you scrape it. I use women's makeup. But for right now, I just like to go with the airbrush. And I'm just going to keep blending and blending and blending. So next step now, what I'll do is I'll go in with some semi-transparency, like pale flesh, mixed with some bright flesh. Start doing some more shading areas. Blend those out a little bit more. And just keep going. So I'll try and keep you up to date on how things progress on this. But, you know, I really want to make sure she's kind of like tanned out too. So I'm not going to go too crazy with the semi-transparent Garage Kit flesh or the base flesh. I want to add some of that bronze in there, and I want to use some of the transparencies to really give her a little bit more of a tan. So yeah, just gonna keep plugging away. Okay, so at this point I'm getting a little bit more of a feel. So when I was doing my transparencies, I would also mix in some of the bronze flesh into it, just to sort of brighten up some areas. So it gives me a little bit better idea of how the colors are hitting this. It also, you know, by having this hand here and overspraying, you get a little bit of a trouble, so I have to pop them in and out over here and stuff. Now, one other thing too is you may see like I may have like dirty hands. I know some people use gloves when they paint. I can't paint with gloves on because I can't feel the item, but I constantly go into the washroom and wash my hands, so I'm never really have oily hands. I really don't sweat a lot either with my hands that I've noticed. I know you get residue on your hands no matter what, but some people like to paint with gloves, some people don't. I personally don't because I feel like I can't get control. So, but I'm always constantly washing my hands if I feel that I got too much dirt on it or any kind of paint and stuff like that. But you can see it's starting to come together a little bit more. We're starting to blend out some of the stuff. I'm starting to get some of these darker areas are hitting, some of the lighter areas are being brought out, and I just got to keep playing with it. Now, I'm not too focused on her hands and her feet, only because you see what happens when I paint it later on. Like I said, I'm doing my own type of paint up, so the hands and feet are going to be different, and you'll see why later on. But I'm still going to paint them up, but I'm not going to worry about making sure every single detail is going to be perfect on them, only because they're going to look completely different when we're done. And also the eye underneath the hair is going to be a little bit different on that side of the face, while this face is going to look fine. So I want this eye, the hands and feet, to look like the base, like I'm going to paint it. But we'll get to that later. Never did it before. I got the idea in my head. It's just a matter of executing it. But right now, all I'm going to keep doing is doing transparencies, shadows, highlights. Transparency, shadow, highlights. Take the item, spray closer to, you know, look into it a little bit closer, turn the airbrush down to a lower PSI, and just keep going back and forth till I get it to where I want it. Right now, she's looking very pale. I don't have enough like colors or shadows into it. I'm going to keep bringing those out. Like I said, what I'll have to do is I'll have to go in closer with the airbrush, pick the item out of the base and do it like closer. Be hard to get into the camera, and it's just a matter of blending. Now, when I get it to the point where I'm happy with it, and I got a lot of my airbrushing done, then I'm going to go, and what we'll do is we'll use like the pastels, and we'll kind of get into areas that you just can't get the airbrush into. I also want to bring out like some facial features with some makeup, like blush, a little bit of eyeshadow, make her pop a little bit more, and just have some fun with it. So like I say, it's your item. It's you know, it's, you get to do whatever you want, so you just have fun with it. Okay, at this point, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I got a feel for how the paint's hitting it. I know what areas I want to darken, some areas I want to highlight, some areas I want to get in a little bit better with colors in the airbrush. So I just got to keep playing with it. The problem is I got to get a little bit closer to do it. So what I do is I usually pull it down from the airbrush booth and I set it up on the table so it spins easier. I can be right in front of it and have more control. And I go very light though. I don't overspray. I do very light spraying. I still kick on the airbrush booth to take out all the overspray, but it just, you don't have to really spray crazy when you start doing this stuff. Very light spraying and not going crazy will go a long way if you take your time. So I'm just going to keep going in and blending. It's just a matter of adding colors, taking out colors, taking, you know, the highlights a little bit brighter, taking the darks down a little bit more, you know, maybe work out the cheekbones a little bit, as you can see what I'm sort of doing with the face. You know, just working out those cheekbones a little bit more. But I'll do more with the pastels and women's makeup later. But for right now, I just want to keep blending this in. But like I said, this is a little bit of a difficult one because of the arms. You can make this part look great, but if you're not putting the arms in and out and making sure everything blends, then your colors look off. So I still got to kind of put them in and out just to kind of make sure. So I'm just going to keep going. Okay, so I'm at a good position right now. I'm happy with where the color's at. I got a lot of shading on it. And like I say, it looks like an alien. It doesn't look right, but it's pretty much where I want it. And it's kind of how I normally paint. So you can see all these colors here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some of this P3 flesh wash, some of this bright flesh, and some of this pale flesh in my airbrush. And I'm going to do like a misting over her because I want her to be a little bit more tan. Bronzy type look. I don't want her being like bright flesh as she is right now. So I just kind of want to dull her back down, I guess, so you give it more of a bronze. And you got to be careful though, because if you mist here very well, but you don't mist over here, what happens is this gets darker and this stays lighter, or some of the scope, like say if you go in this direction, this chest area will stay dark, but this one stays light. So you got to kind of mist around and you got to keep doing it and just kind of blend it all together. Because these arms are in the face in a way, it's a little bit tricky, so I got to pop them in and out and go from there. Then once I get it to where I want it and I think, okay, I kind of like, you know, gave her a bronze skin just enough, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the garage and I'm going to spray Tester's lacquer out of that can onto her. Now what that's going to do with these Garage Kit paints is it's going to kind of like melt the paints together, so some of those layers start to blend in with the bottom layers and you get some more like, you know, natural flesh almost popping out of it. It's kind of tricky how it works. You can't underspray where you spray far away and it's just the dusting on the statue, but you can't spray up close where it just bleeds. You got to kind of spray to the point where you get enough of wetness onto it, you let it blend, and then you let it dry. Then what I do is I let it dry overnight after I do this, because for two reasons. One, I've been at this for a while, and I'm at the point where I'm probably not seeing things, and I'm like, okay, I might be missing stuff. And it's good to walk away from your item for a night or a day or a couple hours and come back to it if you're getting frustrated or if you just need a fresh look at it. And two, because I like to let this paint really kind of cure up for a while. I mean, even though it's pretty much dry, to the hand though, it still feels cool, so the paint still take a little while to kind of cure up and dry, so it's easier that way. And then when I come back tomorrow, I'll see if I need to touch anything up, I'll see if I need to do any more detailing, and then what I'm going to do is start working on some of the facial features, get some of the, the blush, the eyeshadow, going from there, touch up any of the chest and underarm areas, the legs, if I need to darken up some of those areas, maybe do some highlights, and then we seal. So yeah, it's kind of like a process how I do skin tone. It's a little bit tricky. So right now, let's get her a little bit more of a bronze look, darken her up a little bit, and then we'll seal her up in the garage and just let it cure for the night. Okay, so I cleaned up the skin a little bit. I might do some more tomorrow. I'm not really sure. At this point, since I said I was going to be doing a black dress, and a red top, sometimes it's kind of easier for me just to kind of grab a couple paints and just sort of kind of see where the skin's at. And yeah, I'm kind of liking where the skin's at. So this is going to be a black latex dress with a red top and a blonde hair. So let's see, we'll throw a little bit of like a yellowish paint up top. It's not going to be bright blonde, but yeah, so the skin's kind of tan now. I kind of like where it's at. I might add a little bit more. I don't know. We'll see how it works tomorrow. So I'm going to do the tester's dull coat now in here because only it's late at night. We're like around 8 o'clock. It's very hot and muggy in the garage. I can't really open up the door anyway. So I figure I'll do it now in the studio. I'll leave the airbrush booth on for like an hour only because this tester's dull coat for me is very, very potent. I don't like really breathing this in too much, so I'm going to spray her down. I'll kick on the airbrush booth, show you guys how I spray it down. It'll give you an idea of how I kind of blend the skins. It'll be good to shut it down, walk away from her for the night, come back tomorrow, see how things are looking, see what areas maybe I need to highlight, maybe darken. Because sometimes with this tester's dull coat is even though you have some highlights here, and you spray it down, some of those darks might show through, so you got to work out the highlights again. But it helps seal the paint and helps melt it together. It's just something I kind of came up with the Garage Kit skin tones. So that's where we're at right now. So let's seal her up. Then, like I said, I'll come back tomorrow, and we'll see how this is looking. And once I start adding those facial features, like some eyeshadow, a little bit of blush, I don't know what kind of lipstick yet. I might do some heavy lipstick or I might do natural. I don't know. Depends on how I figure I want to do this one. And then it should start coming together, especially when you put all those colors on. But right now I'm really excited the way it's kind of like tannish. Okay, I'm going to kick this on and I'm going to spray. I'll give you guys an idea how it's going. I'm going to be wearing this mask when I spray it though, because even though this airbrush booth still takes out a lot of the fumes, you can spray this item down in the garage. You can let it sit there and still bring the item back in the house and you still get fumes out of it. At least I smell it. So I'm going to sound a little muffled, but it'll give you guys an idea on how I spray these down. And like I said, you don't spray up close and like bleed it, but you don't spray super far away where it just mits and it becomes cloudy. You want to spray it like fairly close. I would say, like, I don't know, about maybe a foot and a half away, something like that. Maybe I'll spray a little bit closer, maybe I'll spray a little bit further. It all depends on how I get a feel for how it's getting on there. So this is going to be a very potent smell in the studio for a while. Kick that on. So let me try and explain this while I can. So you can see it's got a nice wet sheen to her, but it's not bleeding, but it's not dry. And that sort of helps really blend these colors together. It helps the transparency sort of melt. So as of right now, it's just going to sit like this. You might not be able to see it in the camera, but what happened is when you spray it, some of those shadows took away some of the highlights in her cheeks and sort of her lip area. So what I have to do is come back tomorrow definitely and work out the face a little bit, but that's going to happen with some of them with makeup anyway. The other thing too is if you overspray and you get any dots, like some drips on your paint, let it dry. Don't try and wipe it away. Just let it dry naturally and then touch it up, because if you try and wipe away the dots that maybe your can is starting to splatter, you're just going to ruin the paint and it'll be a nightmare. Just let the stuff dry and then touch it up. It's not going to hurt it. It just means that you got to touch up that area. If you're trying to wipe away that dot or that drip, then you're going to run into issues. But the paint's starting to dry up. It's starting to blend together, so definitely got to work out some areas here and there. I can see probably up around the face in here, too much orange showed up. Over here, too much of a shadow showed up there. Bring out some highlights in the chest a little bit there. Legs are looking good. I'm pretty happy with where they are at. The arms, a little bit underneath the arm area here, I got to kind of lighten up a little bit. But yeah, I think that pretty much helps me, and it sort of blends some of this stuff together. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to leave this on, come back tomorrow, we'll see how it's looking, and we'll keep plugging away. Okay, we're going to do some pastel powder work onto the figure now. Just kind of clean up some areas that I can't do with the paintbrush. Now, I like to use women makeup kits. Somebody that was painting for Bowen Designs back in the day told me that if you're not really into pastels, try women's makeup. And I tried it, and it works out better. Because if you get a pastel stick, you have to scrape it off with a paint, like a X-Acto blade or something. And sometimes that stuff isn't really fine. Sometimes it's a little chunky if you don't scrape it correctly. And I find that when you put it on a paintbrush and you put it on the statue, sometimes those big chunks cause issues. So when I started using this stuff here, it works out better because it's such a fine powder. It works out great. Now the other thing too is you want to get the stuff that's a powder that's flat. You don't want to get anything that's got like the glitter into it, because that glitter stuff, if you start like putting it onto the statue and you wipe it away, that glitter just kind of like hangs on and it creates little shiny stuff all over your item. So that's something I like to stay away from. I got a whole bunch of these like different kits. You get them off of eBay. All this stuff here, you go over to like CVS, Walmart, something, you can pick up stuff. I picked up some from old family members, little cousins that didn't want stuff anymore. So, you know, you can do whatever you want. Also, I go on eBay and I pick up these, you know, women's makeup tools here. You get them in bulk for like $5, something like that. And I use these for painting too sometimes and statue work. So it's really good to get a hold of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the item, kind of clean up some areas, brighten up some areas. I'm going to work out some eyeshadow around on this side, but this side I'm not worried because this side of the face is going to turn black with the cracked lava. Just going to work out some shadow areas in here, some highlights I just can't get with the airbrush. And then we're going to go on to seal it. Now sealing is a little bit complex in a sense that you really need to know how to seal it and also dull it back down, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So I just kind of want to bring out some areas and stuff like that. So after I do that and I seal the item and then I kind of take it down, I'll probably work out the lips and then the eyes. When I say the eyes, I'm just going to do the whites in the eyes and then the eyelashes, but then I'll leave those alone until the end of the item and I do the eye decals last. I just find it's easier now to do the eye decals at the end because this eye is going to have one, this side's not. Unless I decide maybe I'm just going to keep this eye like the yellow with the lava crack and this one white. But we'll see how it works out. It all depends on at the end. I want to see how things are going. But I just want to get all this powder work going first to see if I need to get back in there with the airbrush, if I can't do something and stuff. I just want to bring out like blush a little bit and all this other things just to kind of brighten it up. It's a little bit easier that way to use this stuff than to try to get in there with the airbrush and overspray and mess something up. So let's get to work on that and then we'll just keep cleaning this up and going. Okay, so I did all my pastel work. Pretty happy with the way she looks. Got a nice eyeshadow going there. We brought out her cheekbones and blush a little bit. Worked out some shadows and highlights around the upper chest area and shoulders. So what I really want to do now is seal this up. I want to seal it up for a couple of reasons. One, this paint is not as durable as I would like it to be because I guess I'm so used to like a lot of pre-paints from companies where that stuff is like really durable. It's like a candy shell. This stuff right here is kind of like porous, so if you like accidentally spill a drop of like a very light blue paint or red paint, this paint, like this skin tone will just suck up that color, and it's very hard to, you can't really rub it out, you have to paint over it. So I always kind of really like to make my stuff a little bit durable for masking and all that stuff. So at this point, I will not use the Tester's Dull Coat anymore, because if you use the Tester's Dull Coat out of a can on the women's makeup, what it does, it creates fish eyes, it speckles it, it doesn't, it's kind of like a reaction, so you got to stay away from that. So I don't use the Tester's Dull Coat anymore for like sealing up the skin. What I use is Duplicolor gloss paint, same paint that I did on the clear flames from previous video. It's the same exact thing, except we dull it down though after we do it. This creates a nice good clear candy shell on the item, and then what happens is when you dull it down, it creates a room for error. So like when I'm ready to do the outfit, I'll paint the trim over here red, and I'll paint the trim here black. So if by accident my paint is a little too watery or something, what happens is if I don't seal up this skin, this paint will suck up that pigment of the black and kind of bring it in this way if you're not careful. And then if you try to wipe it away, what happens is you start scraping up the paint because the paint becomes wet again and it becomes a nightmare. So this way, by sealing this up and then dulling it back down, and then when I do the trim, say if I do a little bit of trim or a little bit of drip or drop, I can actually wipe it away, and what happens is it wipes off the clear coat that's either the varnish or the flat top coat, and it kind of doesn't rub away the skin. So it's kind of like, it helps room for error. It makes it so you're not running into errors or scraping your paint or, you know, dropping like pigments of color. It just helps. I just noticed that if you're not careful, that'll happen. So once we get the clear coat on, we have a couple of options. The Garage Kits makes a flat top coat. I really use the Vallejo Mecha Varnish, matte varnish, because it dulls it down to the point where it's so dull that it looks like it was never gloss coated. Or there's a satin varnish where you can make stuff look leathery. You know, it's kind of like a little bit of a shine, but a little bit of flat. Garage Kit's flat top coat is sort of the same thing. It all depends that this stuff is a little bit whiter. This stuff really doesn't have that much white milkiness to it. So it all depends on what look you're going for. You got to play with it. You got to kind of practice of the looks and stuff. I mean, there's times where I'll mix the matte varnish with the Garage Kit's flat top coat together to get a look. Sometimes I'll mix the satin varnish with the matte to kind of like not satin but not matte. So it all depends on what you want to do. It's just got to play with the colors and kind of come up with new options. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go in the garage and I'm going to do the gloss coat all over the item. Now when I do that, it's going to make it very glossy. Now the thing is, you can't spray far away, because if you spray far away, what happens is the clear starts to crystallize and dry before it hits the item, and it starts creating a cloud and texture on the character. And if you spray way too close, you'll start bleeding it, and then you'll never get that bleed, because when this stuff dries, it's like car paint, and you'll get that bleeding, and you got to pretty much sand it back out. But once I get the clear coat on, we're going to let it dry out for like a day or two, kind of just walk away from her, let it cure up overnight, tomorrow, and then I can come back and dull her back down. And then what is going to happen is we're going to start working on the lips. We'll white up the eyes, and then we're going to start doing the black and lava cracked hands and feet. And then once those are done, we could kind of gloss them up with something else that's easier through the airbrush, let that dry, and then we can start working on the outfit. So it's kind of a couple extra steps, but I'm having fun with this, and we'll see how it all works out. But this Duplicolor Clear really helps out with errors, and I'll kind of go over that once we get to the part when we start doing all the trim work. Okay, next steps is I want to start doing the hands, the feet, and also the eye area of the cracked lava on the skin. So what I did off camera is I did the eye, with some of you know, like white paint, the eyelashes and the eyebrow and the lips. Just so you get yourself basically a nice thin paintbrush. If you don't have one, you can cut it. It all depends on what you need to do. And it just did real quick. Those will be glossed up at the end. I'll probably add an eye decal too. But the idea is I want this area underneath the hair to be dark and it'd be a glowing yellow fiery eye kind of going out of that area there. As far as the hands go, same thing, which is going to be, the hands are going to be like all painted black right now, and it's going to be blended down to almost about the elbow, so that's going to be all cracked lava. And the same thing with her feet. The feet will go up to probably around the ankle areas around there. I don't want any like blending or anything going up to the legs, so you got to be kind of careful. Can't be over spraying this. You got to have some really good airbrush control. So for the face area, that's going to be a little bit tricky. I might have to use some silly putty on some other areas, or I might have to go in there with some basically some women's makeup powder, black powder, to get in there and seal it. So it's going to be a little tricky, so we'll see how that works. Now as far as the paints I'm using, is I want this to be like a very you know, like kind of like a lava rock that's got kind of like that glow to it, so it's got like that pearly metallic look. So I have Tamiya gunmetal, which is a great like color base for that type of look. But this stuff comes out very thick, so you really can't spray this through the airbrush, at least a fine airbrush. Thicker airbrush, it'll come right out of the bottle. But what I like to do is I like to use, you know, like Garage Kit's colors to actually thin these down. Now, some people might say you should never mix brands, but I've done it in the past with no issues with my stuff. As long as you mix it really well, you do some testing, things will work out fine. So I really like to use Garage Kits as a thinner for a lot of my other paints too. So I also have some transparent Payne's Gray, so if I need to do any kind of a blending where I feel that it's too harsh of an area, like from the black to the skin, I can use some of the Payne's Gray to sort of blend it out a little bit. But you got to go slow, you got to take your time, because if you mess anything up or you overspray or you go too far, then you got to kind of go back and do the whole skin all over again. So that's why I got to really take my time with this and really not go too crazy. So it's just a matter of, the hands will go really fast. This will be a little bit tricky only because, you know, we got some area and some overspray might come up, but the face is really the hard part. So I think what I'll do is we'll start with the hands first, then maybe I'll do the feet, and then I'll get a feel for how the paint's coming out of the bottles, if I need to thin it down anymore, if I need to do something else, and then I'll work out the face area. But this should look really pretty cool once done. Okay, as always, take off your items, put them together, see how things are looking. I like the way that everything's getting blended here with the face and the arms. It's looking really good. As far as the feet going, I think that's going to work out pretty cool. So all that gunmetal and black and stuff that I put onto the hands, that's going to be sort of like the same thing on the base as well. So it's going to look like she's part of the lava cracking on the base, and it's part of her, you know, body and everything like that. So the next step is, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding cracks of lava onto all the black areas. So good thing to do is get online, look up a bunch of cracked lava, look at the base, kind of follow the way the base has all that cracked stuff on it. So what I'll probably start doing is do orange cracks first, just your basic like orangey yellow cracks. And then I'll go in there and add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red. And then probably what I'm going to do is I want to make these areas sort of hot looking too. So I'll do some clear red on top of it. So that gunmetal look to it will have a little bit of red tint to it as well. And it'll kind of look hot as going from there. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I start to blend out the cracks into the skin. So I kind of want to start making like the cracking is going into the skin as well, and kind of blend it out and make it light. So it's kind of like, it's going to be like a tedious like process right now. I got to kind of work on it, blend it, and work, you know, just kind of use my paintbrush and just work out all these cracks. And then after that, I could kind of gloss it up to make it look really hot afterwards, and also help seal it. And then we start working on the rest of the outfit and everything else. Alright, so as you saw, all I really had was a fine tip paintbrush. I took my time, was listening to some music, and just really got in there and just did all these lava cracklings all over the hands, from the transition, areas too as well, underneath the eye, and down here by the feet. So underneath the eye was a little bit tricky though, because I had to really get in there and I just couldn't get into this area too well. So what happened was, at one point I had to go and just get some black paint and sort of work out the eyelashes a little bit with some really dark jet black paint. And then the eyeball, even though it was bright yellow, it was kind of missing. So what I did is I add some pearlized yellow into that eyeball. And then at the end of the project, when I gloss coat it, it'll pop a little bit more. So when I kind of add a little bit of gloss over here, the lips, the eyeball here, and then the hands and feet, it should pop a little bit more. Now, I'm feeling that it's kind of a little bit flat though. It's kind of like just gunmetal paint and then just like lines of lava. So I want to add a little bit more heat to it. And so I have this transparency red here, and I'm going to go very, very lightly on some of the areas just to kind of make them look a little bit redder, at least basically for all that like lava area part, like the like the gunmetal. And what's going to happen though is it will take down the yellow, and I'm already knew that was going to happen, but I've done this in the past where I got to go back in again with some of the yellow and make those pop again. So it's just kind of like a thing of layering. You just got to keep layering it and get it to where you want it. But I like the idea so far. It's like, she's a fire elemental. Did she come out of the lava and she's turning into a female form, or is she kind of walking into the lava and she's going to turn into a fire elemental form? So that's kind of like the fun idea I had with this project. Looking at like manga comic books, regular comic books and all kinds of stuff, I'm just kind of got the idea. So it's almost like she's kind of got like gloves on and then her feet and then the face, but it's kind of a good transition. So by doing this at this point, I still got in the back of my head of how this is going to be painted up. It's going to be a black latex dress. It's going to be a red leathery top. But the hair, I'm still debating, do we go with like a dirty blonde or a jet black? And it's going to kind of, at the end of the project, what I might have to do is sort of take like a picture and maybe go in Photoshop and see what I like better. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where we're at. But right now, we're going to just add in some of this red. We'll see how that looks up. We'll touch up some of the yellows. We'll probably seal it with some semi-gloss or something in those areas. And then that's pretty much as far as we're going with the skin tone. Okay, so off camera what I did is I tweaked up the hands a little bit more. What I do usually whenever I paint up stuff, I usually take pictures and send the stuff to either clients or a couple of my friends that are in the hobby that collect statues, that paint or sculpt, and I ask them for feedback. I just say, hey, is there anything you see I'm doing, or how does this looking? And sometimes they'll be like, hey, this looks a little too bright, this looks a little too reddish, that's kind of not looking too good, it's too potent of a color, stuff like that. So I did send the pictures to Jesse at Garage Kits, just saying, hey, this is kind of what I'm doing with my item. Hopefully we'll have the video up soon. And he says, the fingers got these straight lines across from them. They should probably be broken up. So I thought about it a little bit more. I said, all right, maybe I should just break them up. So I did break up the fingers a little bit more. And I also did break up the toes a little bit more as well, so they're not straight lines. So, don't be afraid to send any pictures of something you're working on to either another painter that's in a hobby that you talk to, or a couple other friends or people you meet at shows like Wonderfest, Jersey Fest, Monsterpalooza, and just say, hey, can you just look at the item and just give me some feedback? Criticism is going to help you get stronger in a hobby. Don't take it to heart. Don't, if somebody says your stuff's horrible, then you just ignore them, whatever. But if somebody says, hey, it's a really good paint up, but I kind of see it as maybe you went a little too bright here, or maybe you should do some washing there, or maybe you should weather that little area there, and just think about it for your next project, because it's just going to help you get stronger and better and help you see things you may not be seeing. So that's kind of like, a good thing to do into the hobby and make you do, because I do it all the time. I'm always sending stuff to friends, and they're always saying, hey, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. Hey, you should check out some pictures on Google. Maybe it'll help you fix that little, metal piece or that rock or something like that. So with that being said, we're pretty much done with this video. We got the skin tone done. We got the facial features done. I did my little cool lava effect on her hands and feet and face. So next video when we come back, we're going to focus on her latex dress, which is going to be black latex bottom. The upper is going to be a red leather. The jewelry will be all silver because I'm not really a fan of gold on my statues. I really like the silver look. And the hair is going to be a very dirty blonde. So we're not going to go like yellow. It's going to be more browns, whitish browns, yellows. And we're just going to play with the hair that way because I think that'll really set it off what I'm going for. But I like the idea so far. I'm having fun with this. It's either, you know, is she walking out of the lava and she's turning into human female form, or is she a female that is actually turning into a lava form? So it's kind of like a what if, and it's kind of just fun. So like I always tell people, whatever you get with your kit, use your imagination and have fun with it. You don't have to do what's on the box. If, you know, say it's a, you know, a female statue like this and you wanted to change it up to a water elemental, you want to, you know, maybe you don't even want the fire base. Maybe you want to put her on something else and make her look like she's on a dance floor, you know, or something like that. That's the fun thing about the hobby. You don't always have to do what comes in the box. You could just take those parts and run with it. So with that being said, thanks for watching the video, and we will be back when we focus on her outfit and hair.